We understand they're going to talk about 6 arms of the Navy, which is why there are 3 of them. 6 arms? So I introduce you to Commander Stephen Barfield, MB, Leading Seaman Peter Smith, and Lance Corporal McGraph. Right there.
Mr. President, sirs, marms, first of all, a very big thank you from all of us to inviting us and for a delicious lunch. One of the dangerous things of our job is you have a lovely lunch and a glass of wine and you have to get up and go to work, but actually that would be about right. But my name is Commander Steve Barfield. I've been in the Royal Navy for 15 years. I joined the Navy in 2002, straight out of university, which probably makes me the most institutionalised man on the planet because I went straight from boarding school to university to the Navy, so I have no idea how the real world operates. In fact, the only 2 things I have left to do with the great societies of state is the church and prison, and I'm trying to figure out in which order to do those before I retire. I have served on 11 of Her Majesty's finest ships and also been fortunate enough to command 3 of them. The first one was HMS Seaman, an offshore patrol vessel, is still 80 metres long, 13 metres wide, with a ship's company of about 40. Our primary job at the time was to conduct fishery protection operations around the UK, out to the economic exclusion zone, which we'll cover, in order to ensure that fishing was being undertaken legally in our waters. That does make me a qualified British Sea Fisheries Officer, which is not very exciting, apart from it was the weirdest day of my naval career, where in order to qualify as a British Sea Fisheries Officer I had to conduct a fish identification test. Which was, slightly bizarre. But about 6 months into that job, the Admiralty decided they no longer wanted me to do that with my ship HMS Seaman, and they sent me to the Caribbean for 8 months. Which, as you can all tell, I was horrendously excited by. My wife, less so, because I left her at home with a rather precocious 2-year-old toddler, a screaming 9-month-old baby, and a ridiculous cocker spaniel. I went to the Caribbean to visit 32 Caribbean islands. But more seriously, we were there to provide reassurance to our overseas territories, of which there are many out there, and also to combat the trafficking of narcotics out of South America into America, and we were quite successful at the time. Having relinquished command of that, I then took over as the commanding officer of HMS Clyde, similar type of vessel, which is our Falkland Islands patrol vessel. So I spent 8 months in the sunny Falklands. Anybody ever been there? Yeah. It's like the north coast of Scotland but bleaker, but it's a lovely place to live. But it was great to work with the islanders, but also to see and to learn a lot about yourself. In only an 80-metre ship, you are operating in the deepest, darkest depths of the Southern Ocean, surrounded by ice, and you learn a lot about yourself out there and about being a mariner. Having relinquished that, I thought the Navy were going to give me a break, but oh no, they were foolish enough to promote me, and then to make me the commanding officer of HMS Iron Duke, one of our Type 23 frigates. So this one about 140 metres long, and I was privileged to command about 140 of the finest men and women in the Royal Navy. And during that time, we conducted major NATO exercises in the Baltic, right on Russia's front doorstep, and also an exercise with the US Battle Carrier Group around Scotland, which was fascinating. But also other things such as we were the lead ship for National Armed Forces Day last year in Liverpool. So just to give you an idea of the variety of what life at sea is like. I will be quiet because we'll get on with the presentation, but I shall allow Matt to introduce himself.
Okay, good afternoon everybody. My name is Lance Corporal McGraph and I'm a Royal Marines Commando. So I joined the Royal Marines in 2014 after finishing with a degree in history. I joined the Royal Marines because I thought it was the best military unit in the world, the hardest, most challenging training, and I was not in for any kind of surprises when I joined. There was 56 of us that started, and at the end there was 12 that got the commando beret last night for commando tests. So after I finished my commando tests and that green beret, I headed up to Scotland, Faz Lane, to join 4-3 Commando Fleet Protection Group Royal Marines, and our job up there is to protect the nuclear deterrent Trident. We look after the nuclear materials, the submarines and the personnel that are based there. And I did this on a rotation basis, so I do 3 or 4 weeks away with the nuclear materials, a bit of time at home on leave, and then I go around Europe on training exercises, working with different militaries and of course different marine units as well. I did that for 3 years. So I did it as GD Marine, General Duties Marine, for 1 year, and then I did it for 2 years as a Lance Corporal, which is the rank that I've got now, and I had about 3 or 4 Marines working for me at that time. Whilst there, I passed my officer selection boards and I was successful, and I moved down to Portsmouth about 8 or 9 months ago now to work with the presentation team to get a wider exposure of the Navy, because obviously being with the Marines for 3 or 4 years, I've been kind of institutionalised into our way of thinking, and I thought it was time to get some exposure to the surface fleet and work with Navy officers like Sir, and with naval ratings as well, like with Smudge. And I've learned so much. It's been absolutely great, the draft, and I've been doing it for about 9 months now. My next step, hopefully, is to transfer across and join the officer cadre in the Navy as an intelligence officer. That's good, Smudge.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Seaman Smith. I've been in the Navy now for coming up to 7 years. In those 7 years, I've spent most of my time on Type 45 air defender destroyers. The first of which was HMS Defender, where I joined there as a baby AB, straight out of basic training, and it was very scary because it was one of the new big ships the Navy had. We went out to the Gulf, spent about 7.5 to 8 months out there working with the Americans, doing various different operations with them. After coming back from there, I was lucky enough to be picked up for promotion to the rank I am now. After completing my career course, which was extremely stressful, and I had to be an adult and not Navy anymore, so I had to tell people what to do, which was quite scary. I then joined HMS Diamond, which was another air defender. We were then tasked to go and do the arms smuggling into Libya and Syria, where I was part of the boarding team, going on with the Royal Marines, going on ships looking for weapon caches and so on and so forth. Also, while we were out there, we got the call to deal with the migrant crisis, so we did a bit of that as well. It was a sad time, but also very rewarding. People were really appreciative of what we could do for them. So yeah, I learned a lot of life experience from that. Further to that then, I went out last year, we went out back onto the Mediterranean, but this time to work with a NATO task group from 27 nations. So a massive, huge task group. We did amphibious landing task, we did war scenarios, fighting submarines and so on and so forth. Taking me on to the submarine bit then, on my arm I've got UW, so I'm an underwater warfare specialist. So I deal with, my first job on board the ship is to deal with the sonar team on board. I take charge of the AVs on there and hopefully help try and find the submarines, which is an extremely difficult task to do. I joined this team in January to give me some, the Navy's recognised the sea time that I've had. I've spent quite a lot of time away from home. So this job enables me to have a bit of a work-life balance, so I get to see my 3 young children. We live up in Liverpool with my wife, much to my wife's annoyance because I'm home a lot more now and I get away quite a lot. And I'll hand you over back to the boss now, who will go on to our brief.
Sirs and Mars, we would like to start with a short video introduction by the head of the Royal Navy.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Admiral Sir Philip Jones, and as First Sea Lord I have the privilege of leading the Royal Navy and Royal Marines. I appreciate you taking the time to come to listen to the Royal Navy presentation team. Their role is to raise awareness amongst the British public of why we need a Navy and the work our sailors and Marines do on your behalf. As an island nation and a trading power, the United Kingdom has always been dependent on the sea for its security and prosperity. With the world as it is, I cannot remember a time since the end of the Cold War when the Royal Navy has been more relevant to the challenges we face or to the UK's ambitions in the world. As I speak, thousands of our sailors and Marines, regular and reserve, are delivering security at home and projecting Britain's influence across the globe. You'll hear more about the operations and activities they're involved in shortly, together with more about the equipment with which they are fulfilling their tasks. You'll also hear about our future. The Royal Navy has delivered the UK's nuclear deterrent for almost 50 years and will continue to do so for decades to come. But we will also shortly take responsibility for operating the largest and most powerful aircraft carriers in the world outside the United States, equipped with the most advanced 5th generation fighter, the F-35B Lightning II. The arrival of the Queen Elizabeth class and her aircraft is a spur for investment across the fleet, with a new generation of ships, submarines and aircraft currently under construction. Together they represent the start of an exciting new era of British maritime power. So thank you for coming today. I'm sure that you'll find the presentation informative, and I know my team are looking forward to answering any questions that you may have. Most importantly, I hope you gain an understanding of why the United Kingdom needs a strong, globally deployed Royal Navy.
Now, it is at this stage that I usually reassure everybody that the Royal Navy presentation team is not a recruiting team. I am reliably informed that we have some volunteers amongst our ranks, therefore I shall be taking names at the end. In all seriousness, now our job is to travel around the UK to raise awareness amongst the general public of the role and the importance of the Royal Navy. The presentation itself will last for approximately 40 minutes, and on completion of which we very much look forward to fielding any questions that you may have.
So the first thing I like to tell everyone then is a lot of places we go, people don't actually understand how diverse the Royal Navy is. And for instance, the Royal Marines are an integral part of the Royal Navy, and they comprise to 7,000 out of the 29,500 or so naval personnel. Now this short video clip I'm going to show you now just gives you a bit of a more detail of the composition of the branches of the Royal Navy. And it works.
The Royal Navy is organised into 6 main elements: the Surface Fleet, the Submarine Service, the Fleet Air Arm, the Royal Marines, the Royal Fleet Auxiliary and the Maritime Reserve. Highly flexible and adaptable, they all work together to deliver a wide range of missions around the world. The Surface Fleet is the most visible part of the Royal Navy, comprising a fleet of versatile and increasingly sophisticated ships. Each type of vessel plays a specific role but retains the versatility demanded from a modern navy. The submarine service patrols the world's oceans on covert operations, remaining silent and unseen. They also provide the UK's independent strategic nuclear deterrent, operating a continuous patrol cycle at sea. The Royal Fleet Auxiliary supports all 6 fighting arms when they deploy, resupplying munitions, fuel and food, transporting equipment and personnel, and effecting repair. The Royal Fleet Auxiliary is pivotal to the Royal Navy maintaining its global presence. Part of the Royal Navy for over 350 years, the Royal Marines are the country's elite amphibious force, held at very high readiness and able to deploy anywhere in the world at short notice, by land, sea or air. Wherever the Royal Navy or Royal Marines go, the Fleet Air Arm go with them. An integral part of operations at sea and on land, hunting submarines, warships and drug traffickers, bringing aid, landing troops and conducting search and rescue missions. The Maritime Reserve comprises of the Royal Naval Reserves and the Royal Marines Reserves. Fully integrated with regular forces, the Maritime Reserve provides fully trained personnel to support a wide range of fleet operational requirements in a number of specialist functions. Deployed across the globe, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, these fighting arms are organised to ensure the Royal Navy continues to meet its key objectives and is able to respond quickly to unforeseen situations wherever and whenever they arise.
So this combination then of ships, submarines, aircraft and Royal Marines enables the Royal Navy to deliver 3 key capabilities: an at-sea nuclear deterrent, an amphibious capability and a renewed aircraft capability. And more importantly, how much is this costing us, the taxpayers? Well, the UK is currently spending approximately 2% of its GDP on defence, and we are only 1 out of 5 NATO countries to be doing so. As a NATO, we spend as a country, we spend over £40 billion a year on defence, in comparison to £140 billion on the NHS and some £114 billion on social security.
But why do we need a strong, globally deployed Royal Navy, and what is the enduring importance and relevance of maritime power to the UK? Well, the first reason why we need a Navy is linked to the primary function of any government, to protect our people, at home, in our overseas territories and abroad, and to protect our territory, economic security, infrastructure and way of life. For this we need credible armed forces. Now the word credible is important because it means having sufficient hard-punching power for deterrence, but ultimately, and if necessary, to fight and win.
So the second reason for having a strong global navy is tied with our ability to project our global influence, reducing the likelihood of threats materialising and affecting the UK, our interests and those of our allies and partners. Now, our country has always been an outward-looking, engaging on the international stage and promoting and protecting our interests abroad. As one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council and a founding member of NATO, the UK is a strong advocate of global defence. NATO has provided collective defence to North America and much of Europe since 1949, and NATO remained the cornerstone of our defence.
But our national defence and security interests continue to lie further afield than Europe and North America. 2018 will be a year of expanding maritime horizons for the Royal Navy and the UK, as we take our nation's message of partnership and prosperity across the world. This includes, for example, major amphibious exercises with our partners in the Persian Gulf and in India, together with a significant presence within the Arctic Circle, both above and below the ice.
We will also deploy to the Asia-Pacific region in greater strength than has been in the case of many years. Together with our fixed tasks, the Royal Navy, the Royal Fleet Auxiliary and the Royal Marines will fly the White Ensign on behalf of global Britain in every ocean of the world. And the opening of a permanent British Naval Support Facility in Bahrain over 18 months ago now is indicative of the UK's continuing naval commitments to the Middle East, for instance. And the UK has 14 overseas territories, 12 of which are islands that welcome the reassurance and the protection that our visits bring to them. The ongoing political dispute over the Falkland Islands and Gibraltar are just 2 examples of the crucial importance of having a Royal Navy that protects our overseas territories.
The third reason we need a strong and globally deployed Navy is due to trade. The UK has always been a great trading nation, and notwithstanding all the advances in transportation over the past century or so, the fact remains that Great Britain is an island surrounded by water. Now, according to the Chamber of Shipping, 95% of UK trade by volume and 90% by value are carried by sea. Why by sea? Because the sea is the most cost-effective way to deliver huge quantities of products over vast distances. Did you know, for example, that the UK still today imports 40% of her food, and we rely on the uninterrupted flow of raw materials, energy and manufactured goods in and out of our country?
In other words, maritime trade is on Ireland's economic lifeblood, and our prosperity and security is almost totally dependent on the successful protection of our sea trading routes. Now, the seas cover 71% of the Earth's surface, yet there's no single international maritime police force. The high seas are simply governed by United Nations Convention. Now, you may recall the pirates off Somalia and the adverse effect that this had on international trade. Well, the world's navies are still there, off the Horn of Africa, deterring pirate activity, and also ensuring the free flow of trade by sea.
The sea is massively important to the UK's economic life simply because we're an island nation. The general perception of the UK public is that shipping is not that integral to their lives, but nothing could be further from the truth. Everything that you could possibly think of in your home, something like food, these things are not brought in by train or plane, these come by ship. If you can imagine the impact of piracy, the impact of major waterways like the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal being shut down for even a temporary basis, you're talking about a huge knock-on impact to the just-in-time delivery that is effectively underpinning global trade these days. The wheels of global trade need to keep on turning, and it's essential that you have a robust naval presence to stop threats like piracy or local conflicts affecting global trade.
Overfishing is the main threat, so taking too much stock from the sea and depleting the stock and therefore having no fish in the future. The general public should be concerned about the long-term availability of British fish, and that all comes down to management. And when you have management, you need surveillance and you need enforcement, because unfortunately in any industry, and fishing's no different, there are people who will bend the rules slightly or even break the rules. The presence of the Royal Navy on the fishing grounds brings with it a certain authority, as you would expect with a naval vessel appearing on your radar. So they provide a valuable service.
We're currently importing probably in the region of 800,000 barrels a day of oil and very significant quantities of natural gas as well. Virtually all of that comes to us passing through very narrow bottlenecks that carry a lot of the world's traded oil. To suddenly see the flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz, for example, stopped completely, the world would effectively run out of usable supplies within about a year.
all of the business I invest in rely on international trade at some level, so whether that's import or export. And actually, when I think about it, probably 3/4 of my businesses absolutely assume that they are going to be able to trade internationally through the oceans. So for me, it would be an awful scenario if we couldn't trust that we were able to move goods and people safely through the seas. Although it's not a business, the Royal Navy, for many people and many countries, it's the face that will conjure up what Britain is all about. And it's very important when you're trying to get yourself seen and heard and known in a world that people can kind of picture you. The vision of them, it's a good vision, it's a safe vision, it's a trusting vision.
So from the earliest days of exploration throughout the British Empire and now into the 21st century, the Royal Navy has always been the protector of our country and one of the principal guardians of the world's maritime trade routes. It was our strength and security at sea that enabled Britain to become the industrial fulcrum of the world. And twice in the last century, the Royal Navy protected the trade convoys at sea that were so crucial to our national survival. Now that we have explained why we need a Navy, how does the Royal Navy operate and where?
Well, firstly, we train as we mean to fight. Now, this means regularly putting our ships and our ships' companies, our submarines and their crews, our helicopters, their aircrew, and the Royal Marines through a vigorous training regime. Now, I have to confess it's not exactly the easiest nor the most popular of activities, but is crucial to maintaining our operational capability. However, testament perhaps to our successful training regime is the number of foreign warships who regularly undergo Royal Navy training in UK waters.
Although our ships, submarines, aircraft and Royal Marines routinely operate separately on individual tasks, we regularly bring them together as a powerful single entity in what is known as a task group, all around the core of a capital ship. Now, this capital ship could be an amphibious assault ship designed to disembark our Royal Marine commandos ashore, either by helicopter or by landing craft, in order to establish a beachhead. Or the capital ship will soon be a Queen Elizabeth class aircraft carrier, with their embarked F-35 aircraft designed for power projection. Now, often this task group will be part of a tri-service or joint expeditionary force, and the Royal Navy, the British Army, and even the Royal Air Force all place considerable importance on being able to plan and operate together.
In addition to being able to integrate the Army, the Air and Air Force assets into our task group, we can also integrate other nations' ships, submarines and aircraft. The global security challenges that we face will continually demand that the navies coordinate their efforts and pool their capabilities. NATO operations, as I've already mentioned, are a key component of Royal Navy business, and we both train and operate alongside other NATO navies as a matter of routine. So this Maritime Joint Expeditionary Force is a versatile and powerful package, and the forward presence of our task groups in an unstable part of the world gives the British government a choice of political or military operations without having to necessarily commit troops ashore.
But aside from task group deployments, what types of operations does the Royal Navy undertake day to day, and where are we currently deployed?
On an average day, around the world, the Royal Navy has thousands of sailors and Royal Marines and as many as 40 ships, submarines and aircraft either deployed or preparing to deploy. Across all 7 continents, your Royal Navy is out there, doing what is asked of it and at times much more, active and fully engaged around the world. As a nation, we rely on the stable supply of oil, gas and raw materials into our ports. By guarding the flow of these energy resources and ensuring trade routes remain open and safe to use, the Navy protects UK supply lines and safeguards its prosperity. Every day of the year, the Navy provides security by maintaining a visible presence in home waters and in regions overseas where there are strong UK interests. This allows the Royal Navy to build relationships with regional partners and respond rapidly to conflict, aggression and unforeseen natural disasters, helping restore stability, bringing humanitarian assistance and saving lives. Promoting partnerships with other nations is key to helping them to make the sea safer for everyone, as well as helping to share the burden of providing security. it also allows us to increase levels of understanding and cooperation between nations. By being globally deployed, the Royal Navy prevents conflict. Its reassuring presence can often be enough to deter threats, help keep the peace, and stabilise potential hotspots. And being globally deployed also allows the Navy to respond swiftly to unforeseen events as and when they emerge. This is why the Navy is always ready to fight and win in combat at sea, on land, and in the air. All of the Royal Navy's tasks are possible because the 30,000 sailors and Marines of the Royal Navy are a highly skilled and efficient force. They are the lifeblood of the service, able to adapt to whatever the mission demands and are the key to delivering success anywhere in the world. The Royal Navy is your Navy, working 365 days a year around the globe with one aim: protecting our nation's interests.
The Royal Navy undertake three broad types of operations: military operations, constabulary operations, and diplomatic operations.
So military operations are about the war fighting at sea, but also includes naval gunfire support to friendly troops ashore, deterrence patrols, mine hunting and intelligence gathering. In addition to naval operations off the coast of Iraq in 2003 and off Libya in 2011, our Royal Marines, helicopters, medical personnel and planning and admin staff also played a crucial part in land operations in both Afghanistan and Iraq.
Much of our effort is currently centred in maintaining stability in the Middle East. 4 mine hunters are permanently deployed in the Gulf, supported by a command ship, a vital part of the wider coalition effort in the region. The Royal Navy remains a world leader in mine warfare and in keeping sea lanes open in times of crisis. A Naval Air Squadron detachment and the Royal Fleet Auxiliary are also deployed in the area. Additionally, a nuclear submarine armed with Tomahawk land attack missiles is also regularly deployed east of the Suez Canal. In the Far East, HMS Sutherland, one of our frigates, will be conducting international engagement, maintaining what we in the military know as the Five Powers Defence Agreement. Now, this is an agreement between the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia and Singapore. In a period of ongoing negotiation in the Korean Peninsula, Sutherland will be available to work closely with our regional partners, including US, Japanese and South Korean forces, and also be available to participate in joint training exercises. The frigate now is 3 months into her Pacific deployment and has recently visited Australia in the past week. Now, one added bonus about her deployment out there is this visit may encourage the Australian government and the Royal Australian Navy to buy British, or at least British designs, as Australia prepares to invest massively in its frigate force. In the North Atlantic and Caribbean region, we still have the Royal Fleet Auxiliary ship Mount Bay, who of course was seen in action during what is known in the military as Operation Rumen, but everybody else is the UK's response to the devastating hurricanes that hit the region last summer. Now, its presence continues to afford protection and reassurance to our overseas territories. And having been stationed in the Caribbean since July last year, before those hurricanes devastated the area, Mount Bay has also supported the regional efforts against narcotics and smuggling, as well as providing that crucial humanitarian response when required. In the South Atlantic, our offshore patrol vessel, HMS Clyde, my old ship, continues to offer a permanent presence around the Falkland Islands. And our ice patrol vessel, HMS Protector, has returned to Antarctica, working to improve the navigational and seabed data in the region, and has recently surveyed areas that have never been surveyed before. Now, this information will be passed back to the UK Hydrographic Office and will increase our understanding of the environment in the area, but also widen areas that are deemed safe to navigate in. In the Mediterranean, NATO has a standing maritime task group and a maritime mine countermeasure group. Now, the Royal Navy currently provides the command platforms for both of these groups, with HMS Duncan, one of our Type 45 destroyers, leading the standing maritime task group, and she has recently undertaken a 10 allied nation exercise in order to improve security in the Mediterranean region. And HMS Enterprise, one of our hydrographic survey vessels, continues to provide the command platform for the mine countermeasure group as well.
So in the North Sea and the English Channel, a lot closer to home, our ships and our submarines continue to respond to the Russian naval activity, including escorting the Admiral Kuznetsov, as seen here. And on the Christmas period, we saw HMS St Albans and also HMS Westminster deployed to escort Russian destroyers as they also passed through our waters, which is becoming a regular occurrence. And hidden away in the depths of our seas is our nuclear deterrent submarine, providing the UK's ultimate insurance policy and also playing a leading part in NATO's collective defence. Now, the continuous at-sea nuclear deterrent is now nearing its 50th year of operations, and there has never been a day when one of these strategic submarines has not been at sea.
The second type of operation is constabulary operations, which is essentially a policing function. It is about supporting the international rule of law on the high seas, protecting maritime trade from piracy, and countering illegal activity, such as people, arms, and drug smuggling.
In UK waters, the Royal Navy complements the UK Border Force on the maritime activity by conducting security and counter-terrorism patrols. In fact, we're regularly more involved in these types of operations than what people might think. And these photos that you can see here are actually from the frigate HMS Somerset, who recently supported the UK Border Force in undertaking a major drug bust off the coast of Aberdeen, which had a street value of over £500 million. We also help to protect and monitor our fishing industries. Our Fishery Protection Squadron dates back to the 14th century, and their mission remains mostly the same. Patrolling the fishery of the UK, the limits of the UK, which is an area of some 80,000 square miles of sea, which includes the economic exclusion zone, which extends 200 miles from the coastline. Our divers, and coupled with our mine hunters, and our onshore bomb disposal teams, are still regularly disposing of World War II ordnance. And you may have seen recently in the news in the Thames, where we were called upon to remove a bomb from there. And this short video I'm showing you now was a picture of the team exploding a World War II bomb in the entrance to Portsmouth Harbour, and as I say, they're continually working to get rid of World War II ordnance.
Now, the third type of operation is the benign or diplomatic operation. This type of naval activity is often in response to an unforeseen event, be it a humanitarian crisis, a sudden deterioration in regional security, or a natural disaster such as seen in the West Indies, as I mentioned previously. We also undertake personnel rescue, such as evacuating British nationals from Beirut in 2006 and Libya in 2011. And the Royal Fleet Auxiliary ship Argus, along with a detachment of Royal Marines, naval aviators and medics, helped stem the tide of Ebola in Sierra Leone in 2014 to 2015. The Royal Navy has and will also continue to support civil authorities in times of crisis. You may recall when the armed forces were called upon to provide security for the London Olympics in 2012. The Royal Navy were also used when severe flooding affected the UK, and as a service we provided much needed assistance to vulnerable towns. The Royal Navy and Royal Marines Commandos were at the forefront, providing flood defence and support to the emergency services.
So our ships continue to operate in the Mediterranean and the Aegean Seas, and HMS Enterprise, who's one of our hydrographical survey ships, actually rescued over 9,000 people during their time in the Mediterranean. We also have a detachment of Royal Marines in the Aegean Sea who helps us support the UK Border Force migrant operations. So how many Royal Naval personnel do we have in order to undertake all this work? Well, our total of approximately 29,500 or so personnel roughly equates to the same size as Specsavers, which is half the size of Boots.
Next, I want to talk about our people. The sailors, the Royal Marines and the airmen, both regular and reservists, who we consider are the single most important factor, and from where the strength and the flexibility of the Royal Navy is derived. Unchanged throughout the centuries, our people are the lifeblood of the service, and it is only through the professionalism and determination of our men and women that the Royal Navy can deliver so much around the world, as this short video clip demonstrates.
Like any large organisation, the Royal Navy relies on the people who work within it for its success. However, unlike a bank, factory or retailer, naval service personnel also serve their country, and at times may be asked to put themselves in harm's way and their lives on the line. In return, the Royal Navy is committed to being a top-class employer, ensuring that its people are looked after and given every opportunity to make the best of themselves during their naval career and beyond. It does this by fostering a spirit of excellence, ensuring each and every person has the opportunity to learn and develop new skills, grow in confidence and become real experts in their field. By realising their potential, personnel help uphold the spirit of individual professionalism, pride and collective sense of purpose that is the very fabric of the Royal Navy. Looking after an individual's morale and social needs is also important. The Royal Navy monitors and where possible improves conditions for those serving, from accommodation, pay and allowances to healthcare, and improved resettlement support. The Royal Navy ensures the personnel strike a balance between time away on operations with time ashore. It also understands the importance of supporting and reassuring families of its sailors and marines whilst they are deployed and away from home. Royal Navy and Royal Marine Reservists, together known as the Maritime Reserve, are an integral part of the Royal Navy structure. On average, 10% of Royal Naval Reserves and 19% of Royal Marine Reserves are deployed at any one time. Reservists are vital, not just to augment the regular service in times of crisis or conflict, but increasingly in supporting the day-to-day business of a lean, busy, globally engaged service. There are few organisations as complex, adaptable, or as effective as the Royal Navy. Admired the world over, it is committed to the people who serve within it, those that make it what it is, and will continue to do so whatever challenges lie ahead.
Perhaps one thing you may have noticed from this video clip is how normal our people look. I say this because sometimes people think that the armed forces are a different breed. But of course we and our families are part of society, and we therefore have the same hopes and fears in life as everyone else. And I believe it is to their great credit that so many men and women from such hugely diverse backgrounds continue to voluntarily put on a uniform, join the armed forces and serve their country. And in return, the Royal Navy continually adapts, and as it has always done, to the realities of the society in which we live.
One of our greatest strengths of the Royal Navy is the weight of our history, which over the centuries has given us a unique set of values, customs and traditions, and we expect all our people to uphold them. Today, our core values, as we like to call them, are commitment, courage, discipline, respect for others, integrity and loyalty.
The Royal Navy is also very much a teamwork-orientated organisation. It has to be, in order to enable sometimes hundreds of people to work and live together in a cramped ship or a very cramped submarine, sometimes for up to 9 months at a time. And it is by working together that we succeed, along with strong leadership at all levels, from the captain in charge of the ship down to the leading hand who looks after the most junior sailors when they're on board.
The Royal Navy is a strong champion of continuous personal development, which means that everyone has the opportunity to move up the ladder and get promoted on merit. For many sailors who leave school at 16 or 17, perhaps a few years in a disciplined organisation gives them the confidence and initiative to self-improve, and you'll often find GCSEs and A-level classes taking place on deployed ships. Many of our people take up the financial support which allows them to study for a degree, and we work to ensure that the military skills that we gain can be accurately mapped to the industry's future needs, either through accreditation or through industry recognised apprenticeship schemes.
One useful indicator of personal development on merit in the Royal Navy is the fact that just under a quarter of our officer corps is made up from sailors coming up from the ranks. And we continue to strive to better reflect our diverse society through an agile recruitment process. You should also be aware that as of today, well not of today, but as of recently, all branches of the Royal Navy, including the Submarine Service and the Royal Marines, are open to women. So to the future. For the first time since the end of the Second World War, the Royal Navy is seeking a modest increase in the overall numbers of its uniformed personnel, where we hope to recruit and retain more junior ratings to crew the ships at the front line. Furthermore, our part-time and full-time reservists are and will remain an integral part of our manpower structure. We also have exciting new plans in place for the future shape of the Royal Navy. Our new ship and aircraft building programmes will ensure that we remain at the forefront of global operations, with a balanced fleet, capable of undertaking the full spectrum of military operations. And of course, these building programmes, which allow for the longer-term retention of regional jobs, offer a significant contribution to our country's national prosperity.
The two Queen Elizabeth-class aircraft carriers are the largest Royal Navy ships ever to be commissioned. 3 times the size of the previous carriers, they will be at the forefront of naval operations and will deliver significant power projection and conventional deterrence on the world's oceans for decades to come. The F-35B Lightning II aircraft will form the airborne strike force of the 2 new carriers. The Royal Navy will operate a short takeoff, vertical landing variant similar to its predecessor, the Barfield jump jet. Combining the agility of a fighter with the punch of a bomber, it will deliver precision strikes on land, maintain air defence for naval task group operations, and will support troops ashore. Both the aircraft carriers and their aircraft will continue a long tradition of projecting power from the sea, and their presence will enhance the UK's strategic impact and influence on the international stage. The Royal Navy's 13 Type 23 frigates will be replaced by 8 Type 26 global combat ships and 5 Type 31 general purpose frigates. The backbone of the Royal Navy, our frigates are capable of undertaking the full range of operations, from warfighting and naval task group protection duties, peacekeeping enforcement, anti-piracy patrols and trade route protection, through to search and rescue or assisting the evacuation of people from trouble spots or natural disasters. We are also in the process of building 3 new helicopter-carrying offshore patrol vessels in Glasgow, with 2 more to follow. These very capable vessels, although smaller than our frigates, are taking on an increasingly wider range of roles, including duties such as fishery protection in UK waters and humanitarian assistance patrols further afield. Providing ever greater support to the Royal Navy, the Royal Fleet Auxiliary is also a visible UK naval presence across the globe. 4 new support tankers are being procured, and they will provide store support, fuel and fresh water to both individual ships at sea as well as for carrier strike and amphibious task group operations. Work continues in Barrow-in-Furness in Cumbria on the building of the remaining Astute class attack submarines, which are progressively replacing the Ultra Falcon class submarines. In addition, the Dreadnought class of ballistic submarines are now being built, which will replace the 4 Vanguard class submarines that currently form the UK's strategic nuclear deterrent force. Innovation and technology has been at the forefront of the Royal Navy for hundreds of years and is an essential part of its continual development. Our new ships, aircraft and submarines will ensure that the Royal Navy remains a potent yet balanced force capable of undertaking the full range of naval operations.
The work continues on the building of our offshore patrol vessels. HMS Forth is now in Portsmouth, completing her first major set of sea trials. HMS Medway, which is our second batch 2 offshore patrol vessel, is now in the water in Scotstoun, up in Scotland, and her commissioning ceremony was held in October last year. And HMS Trent, the naming ceremony took place in March. And in July of last year, the first deal was cut for our new Type 26 frigate, which is HMS Glasgow. And the new names for the next 2 have been released as HMS Cardiff and HMS Belfast. So HMS Queen Elizabeth commissioning ceremony was held in December with Her Majesty the Queen in attendance. She's currently back alongside in Portsmouth after successfully completing her first set of Rotary wing trials. And we're very much now looking forward to the fixed wing trials, which will be later on in this year, and the arrival of the F-35B. So with a 4.5-acre airfield afloat at sea anywhere in the world, carrier strike operations will be the nation's primary conventional deterrence and coercion force.
In summary, we make no apologies for taking a positive attitude about the future of our service, because there is much to be positive about. Carrier strike is fast becoming a reality. Renewal of the nuclear deterrent is underway, and the most important of the supporting projects are well in train. The Royal Marines are and will remain involved in every aspect of our future, and we have a bold and ambitious plan to accelerate the introduction of new technologies that will change the way we work for the better. Most important, we retain a confident vision for the future. Demand is ever growing from the government, and hopefully the importance of a strong Royal Navy is increasingly recognised in the public consciousness. Mr. President, Sirs Moles, thank you very much for your time. That completes our presentation, and we'll be delighted to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, the EU are having discussions about having their own military and defence force. Clearly we're in the EU
Yes.
are discussing that now.
They are.
Yeah. So where do you think we stand as a military force if we're in this Brexit scenario? Where do you see our space?
So our space will always remain with NATO. NATO has, as we said, NATO has kept peace and security in the wider European and American region since 1949. Given the size of all the fleets that are around the world, if you take out the Americans, who just spend more than the next 10 navies put together, the only way we maintain that collective defence is through NATO. And whilst I am unable to have an opinion of it. In my personal opinion, NATO will remain the cornerstone. Now, the EU may go ahead with a defence force in order to tighten its, in order to improve its cohesion as a unit, but that force will still form part of NATO. So it will be subsidiary to NATO, if I could use that word, and also I could say it if I put my teeth in. But that will form part of a wider community's contribution to NATO, which will remain the cornerstone of how we operate around the globe if we start looking at global defence and the threats from Russia and China. Where NATO comes in is the threat from what we call a peer adversary, so someone who is of a similar technological advancement and has the money to spend. That is where we will definitely need to pool our resources as per NATO. And the EU Defence Force, were it to ever come off, is part of that. If that answers your question. So,
how big a threat are the Russians in our water? How far can you take the engagement with them?
Not very, because I don't particularly want to start World War III. How big a threat are they? Conventionally, not very. Not that they don't pose one, but when I say conventional, I mean militaries fighting militaries. The chance of that is very slim. Their activity is definitely increased, but that activity really isn't really against us. They have a lot of equipment and hardware off Syria, because that's where they're focusing. We just happen to be in the way of where they come from Murmansk or out of the Baltic all the way around. Where the threat lies in what we call the asymmetric space. So it is cyber warfare. It is the threat to our infrastructure. Now, I personally don't believe that the Russian government are going to suddenly start hammering us with cyber warfare, overt cyber warfare. But what you have to realise is that when we talk about the importance of the maritime, we mentioned quite a lot, 95% of trade, etc., etc. Almost 35% of all banking transactions go under the sea via cables. You look at the North Sea, all of the oil and gas pipelines that come through. So that is why we spend quite a lot of time watching the Russians come through, because they are very, 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 very unlikely to do anything, but we have to make sure that they're not. So they're not, we escort Russian ships, as you saw the pictures, through. They're entirely legally allowed to do that. There's nothing illegal about it. We just make sure that A, they know we're there, but B, also that they don't stop and do something. Because if they suddenly stop, you're like, that's a bit weird. The threat from Russia, I mean, you have to look at all of these. I mean, look, I get a lot of, the threat from Russia and the threat from China. Neither of them, at the moment, are massive expansionist powers. They're not looking to create greater territory and to take it over and rule it. It's all about, if you take China, that's all about economics. They feel hemmed in through the Straits of Malacca. That's where 95% of their oil comes from. So they're going to go out into the South China Sea in order to try and protect that, to make sure that it remains open. Russia, for example, is so interested in Syria because they're after a warm water port, because there are only other warm water ports in Sevastopol, in Crimea, and they've still got to get through the Bosphorus to get there. So none of the threats that we see out, that I see out there at the moment, the threat is there, but what we're not looking at mass expansion. What we are looking at is it at a nationalist front, and it's where military operations and global political, economic all sort of merge into this sort of grey mush. That there's all sort of bits of it that go on. The threat is there. I don't think, personally, this is the word according to me, I don't think we're going to end up in a shooting war. But there will be vying for geopolitical power, influence in different areas. If you boil it down, we're not in another Cold War, but we're pretty close. If that answers your question, it's massively complicated. But the actual shooting, the chance of people shooting at each other, as for example, we follow one of their frigates or destroyers down here, is zero. I've done it loads of times, and you talk to them and you have lovely conversations and you make sure that everybody's safe, and if they haven't got the weather forecast, you provide it for them. So it's all very cordial. There's just a lot of posturing going on, actually. So,
just the some ammunition ship in the Thames estuary. It's been there since the Second World War. Does that come under your responsibility?
It is checked by the Royal Navy. Well, it doesn't, but they use the Royal Navy dive team to go out and check it. The theory being, it's been there for long enough, so we don't think it's going to blow up. The other thing is you can't go up, because if it all did go up, it would wipe out half of Essex and a bit of Kent as well. So,
Do you have any more questions?
so before you finish, can I dive in? I have to apologise for this very quickly, but part of what we do as we go around the country is to gather, I'm going to call it intelligence, I'm not actually trying to spy on you all, is how the Royal Navy is viewed in each area. And people far cleverer than me have come up with 2 questions which I'm going to ask you, and I just need a show of hands. There is an option, so it is a bit multiple choice, but if I could just ask them and then everybody put their hand up, Matt, prepare to write. So taking into consideration all the things of which you think are important in life, how favourable or unfavourable is your overall opinion of the Royal Navy? Now your options are A, very favourable, B, favourable, C, neutral, D, unfavourable, and E, you don't really like us very much. So if I can have a show of hands for A,
Yes.
B, C, anybody for D and E? Nobody's ever answered D or E yet, mainly because I think they're standing here and I think they're going to answer. Now, taking into account, obviously, we have assisted in your awareness of the Royal Navy. But before this presentation, what was your perception of the Royal Navy? So A is, I was unaware of the Royal Navy. B is, I was unaware of the role of the Royal Navy. I was aware of the role of the Royal Navy, but didn't fully understand it. C is, I understand the role of the Royal Navy. D is, I understand and am very supportive of the Royal Navy. Sorry, and E is, I promote the Royal Navy everywhere I go. Well, yeah, if you keep doing that, we're not going to have a job anymore. So, can I have A, I was unaware of the role of the Royal Navy. Good. B, I was aware of the role of the Royal Navy, but did not fully understand it. C, I understand the role of the Royal Navy. D, I understand and am supportive of the role of the Royal Navy. And anyone for E, basically you do our job for us. Mr. President, Sir Arms, again, thank you very much for your company, a lovely lunch, and I will now eventually be quiet.
Yes, Mr. President, excuse me. Oh, takes me a fortnight to get up.
He's signing up.
I wish to, yeah. Thanks, three lads, for coming today. It was such an interesting talk. I have a certain affinity with the Navy, insofar that I had both my father and brother in the Navy during the war, having lost my brother at the age of 19. So I've been aware of the Navy pretty well. The only thing that frightens me about your talk is how much do we rely upon foreign countries to build the ships that we require? It seems to me that we now have very little shipbuilding in this country, but hopefully for what we've got the standard is good, and you know, we rely upon you to see us through any dark times. Having been here today and eaten the lunch we've had, it makes you appreciate Royal Navy food. But thank you for coming. Have a safe journey home, and may you all get home and see your family in the near future.
Thank you very much.
Is there any other business? I remind you of the apologies book, the menu and the website.